Hi there. We are going to take a look at the basics of creating methods in Java, JavaScript, and Python. And methods or functions are something that we haven't really created yet, but we've used quite a bit. Anytime you have made called a statement, usually with parentheses next to it, that does something for you, you're calling a method. So, for example, if we were to say print hello, there's actually a lot of work that goes into making the computer know how to get those letters hello into the console. And we use this print function to do it. So we write print, which is a name that's defined for the Python language and is associated with a lot of lines of code. And one of the things that this particular method needs in order to do its job is some extra information. It needs to know what we want to print. So we send that information inside those parentheses. And just about every programming language works in the same way. In JavaScript, we say system.out.println, hello world, and it prints to the screen the same way that the Python print statement does. There you go. And then in JavaScript, we use console.log, where log is the method. You can even say the word there, method. And we could say hello, and it will also print it to the screen. And in each of those languages are different instructions that are required in order to make that work. But what we want to do today is create our own functions. So define a task that is wholly unique and new that allows us to bundle some lines of code together, give those lines of code a name, and explain from this point on, if I just call it name, I want to do these lines of code. So let's start in Python, and we are going to define a function that, let's say, prints a couple lines of code or prints some things to the screen. So the way that we're going to do it is we start by typing the word def, which means we want to define a new function or a new method. Now we need to give it a name. So how about we call a new print method? And we put parentheses next to it and a colon. And now we give our instructions for what does it mean when we do the new print method. So perhaps first we print, this is the new print method. And then down here, instead of saying print, we can actually just call that method's name, new print method. And when we do that, just like when we use a variable's name, it replaces that variable with the information that the variable references. When we call this method's name, it replaces it with the lines of code that are associated with it. In this case, just this one line of code. So when we hit run, it says this is the new print method, and it calls it. Now, let's do this exact same thing in Java and JavaScript. So in Java, we need to first make room. We want to stay inside our class, but outside of the main method. In fact, here is kind of a template for us to use because our program runs inside a method, in this the main method. So we are going to do public static void, and don't worry what those words all mean for right now. But we're going to call it a new print method, and we are going to system.out.println. This is the new print method, a semicolon at the end of the line. And then down here in the main program, instead of printing out hello world, we're going to print the new print method. And when we run it, it's going to get to this line, redirect, and run these lines up here and get printed to the side. Great. Now let's look at the same thing in JavaScript. JavaScript, we're going to use the reserved word called function. And same thing, new print method, we do the name next. Method, we give it a set of parentheses, and the associated code goes in a code block with curly braces. And we are going to say console.log. This is the new print method. Semicolon at the end there. And instead of console.log here, we're going to call the new print method, parentheses, semicolon, and we run. There we go. All right, so we have 3 new methods in each of these programming languages that we can call, and it'll do the work of that method. The nice thing is we can call these things as often as we want to. So for example, if I wanted to go into, let's do Java, for example, and run that method 10 times, I could say for int I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, run this method 10 times. And after it compiles and runs, you should see new print method coming up 10 times. So functions become pretty nice because they're reusable. You don't have to type the code over and over again, even if you want to do the same task over and over again. And this is the same way that we as humans learn how to do something new associated with a name, like say a jumping jack. Every time we're asked to do a jumping jack after we learn how to do the first one, we already know how to do it. It's pretty easy. Now, I want to show you two other aspects of functions that are pretty important. One is called parameters. That's sending information to the method. And one is called return, which is information comes back from the method. So let's go back to Python to start. And maybe what we're going to do is send a name. We'll send a parameter. So I'm going to write Kevin as a parameter here. And up here, where we define the method, we are going to put in parentheses that some name, some piece of information is going to be given to us when this method is called. And we're going to refer to it here as name. This is called a formal parameter, meaning it's kind of like a form to be filled out. This is called the actual parameter because I'm actually calling the method. Now, with this formal parameter, I can now use it inside of my method definition. So, for example, after I say this is the new print method, I might print hello name, how are you? All right. So now when we run it, I got this is the new print method. Hello, Kevin, how are you? In fact, what we could do is go down here and create a variable, my name equals input, which input coincidentally is another method that's already been defined for us. Enter your name. And then in the new print method, I can send my name to it. All right, and it's important to distinguish again, where we define the method, we're saying you expect something. I don't know what value it's going to have, but let's temporarily call it name. And when the method is actually called, you'll have some actual information there. In this case, a variable called my name. So these do not need to have the same name. The actual formal parameters do not have the same name. So I'll run it, enter your name. Let's just say Mike, so it's something different. And this is a new method. Hello, Mike, how are you? So we are able to take information in. And this is true of Java as well. So we can put in here a formal parameter. And for Java, we need to say what type of formal parameter. So a string name. And then down here, we are going to put in, say, Kevin. And we can just put a second line, system out print line, hello, name. And if we run that, we get hello Kevin those 10 times, so it's in a loop. And then in JavaScript, we are going to put this in as well. So there's our formal parameter. Down here, we're going to put our actual parameter. And inside the function definition, we can say console.log hello name. All right, and there we go. All right, so taking a parameter in allows you to bring information into a method and use it to do the job. Now, we can also send information back from a method. So, for example, in Python, we printed in the message, how are you? What we could do is take input now, enter how you are feeling, and let's take that and return that information. Now you notice return turns blue. That is a reserved word, meaning that it has already been defined to do a special task. And what return does is it takes a piece of information, in this case, user input, and sends it back to whatever part of the program called this method. So right here on line 8, we call this method, which is going to return some input. Now we can store that. So maybe we put the word feeling here and set it equal to what is returned from that method. And what we could do is, let's say, print, how about my name, is feeling. All right, so now we're going to do both send information to the method and get information back from it. So let's run it, enter your name. My name is Kevin. Hello, Kevin, how are you feeling? I am happy, and Kevin is feeling happy. So up here, we defined what this method does. We were able to send information to it with the use of parameters, and we're able to use the return reserved word in order to send information back to our main program. That is also true in Java. The big difference in Java, if we're going to return information, so let's just say the word test, for example, we're going to have an error message at first because it says this is a void type method. So in Java, you need to say what type of information you're going to return. In this case, we're returning a string. Now it's fine. And what we can do is say, well, actually, I'm going to take this out of the for loop just so that we don't have any compounded problems. So string x equals whatever that returns. System.out print line x. So we just want to show that we can get information both to and from the program, or the method, sorry. So there we go, test is getting printed even though x is only being defined as a result of calling that method. And then in JavaScript, we can do, of course, the same thing, return test. And we'll make a var x, which equals the result of that, and we'll just print out that x. Oh no, console is not defined because I spelled it wrong. There we go, much better. All right, so there are just the very foundational basics, the definition, the structure of a definition of a method, how to put in parameters, how to call the method, and how to put in return statements and actually use the information that is returned from a method. All right, bye now.